So what do you guys know about short-term rentals? So it's usually a furnished self-contained suite that you can rent for less than 30 days. So the most common thing that people think of, they don't think of STR. The first word that pops in their mind is Airbnb. Everyone says Airbnb. It is the most common platform. So a lot of times when I'm communicating with owners or potential people, I'm like Airbnb. I don't usually always say short-term rentals. I say Airbnb. And then I start working short-term rentals into the conversation because we don't always use Airbnb. Sometimes we do direct booking websites. Sometimes we do Vrbo, things like that. They're also called short stays, serviced accommodations, and corporate housing. So corporate housing, service accommodations are really great. I'm going to talk about that in the class a little bit more because we also talk about midterm rentals, which is good for nurses, doctors, military people, and stuff like that. And that's all part of the short-term rental deal that we're doing. So again, STR is the first thing people think of is Airbnb. So today I'd like to take some time and discuss with you the different strategies. So you have ownership, we have the rental arbitrage, and then we have co-hosting. I want to talk about setting up systems to self-manage with little time, and you can manage from anywhere. If you have one of these, you can manage a short-term rental. And I'm going to give you some examples of the money that I've made and helped other people make money over the last couple of years. So again, as much as I want to create win-win scenarios, I do want to put my ass on a beach. I do want to put my kids through college and stuff like that. So another reason I'm doing this for is for the money. But we can have fun and help people along the way as well. Oh, by the way, I have potty mouth. Remember who was in my last class? I think that was, Sam, remember? I have potty mouth. So if I insult you, I do apologize ahead of time because sometimes I just like throw things in there. So, but I don't think I said the big bad word. Somebody else did and got it out of the way, right, Sam?
Yes.
So the biggest strategy that we want to talk about is ownership. Now, I have these little dollar signs in place because it means you have to have more money into the game. So ownership is either you actually intentionally go out and purchase a property to run as a short-term rental, or you actually may have a ownership in a multi-unit property. Short-term rentals are a great way to increase your NOI, your net operating income. And that's something we like to talk about income properties and stuff like that, because the main basis we want to do is increase our NOI. We want to increase that net operating income. And if you own a house and you have a basement suite, you can let it out under short-term rentals if your bylaws allow that. And again, we talk about due diligence quite specifically to make sure that you put yourself into the right area so you don't, affect yourself being shut down. But with ownership, you have to have more money into the game. So you have to have either 20% down payment, or if you already own the property, that's another great way of doing it as well. So you can convert a unit. Say you have a duplex, a 3-plex, 4-plex, 12-plex in a great area that might make a great short-term rental, then you can actually put it in there and increase your NOI. One thing I definitely like to stress that if you are going in to purchase a property specifically for a short-term rental, you need to do that due diligence over and over and over again and make sure the bylaws are okay. One thing you really want to double check when you go to purchase is if you're going into a condo board situation, you want to really double check that one because you don't be able to get to control the condo board. So at any time they can switch it over. I actually just had a co-hosting situation where I've been co-hosting a short-term rental for a nice young couple. And as of February 1st, the condo board is shutting all short-term rentals down. So now they own this property and now they have to either put a renter in or try and sell it. So you want to make sure you do your due diligence. And we talk about that quite extensively in February when you guys take the course. Now, the other one takes a little less money to get into. So this one you can probably get into for about $10,000 to $15,000, maybe as low as $8,000. You can get into a rental arbitrage situation. So what rental arbitrage is you find someone who has a problem. Again, remember we're creating win-win situations. So you have someone who has a property that's maybe already a short-term rental, or they're not doing so well. Maybe the rental market's not doing well, or they're tired of tenants and toilets. So you come in and you lease the property from them. And you have to make sure you let them know, because we're going to be upfront and honest, that we're going to be subletting it onto a short-term rental platform. And we talk about Airbnb and things like that. Again, I'm going to discuss all that fun stuff, how to do that in the class. But what we want to do is with this, we are using other people's properties. So I like to talk about OPP. We're using other people's properties to make money. So you come in, if it's not furnished, you furnish the property and you get it ready to go and you put it on Airbnb or Vrbo and you make money off of someone else's property. Who would like to do that? That is cool. So like for $10,000, you can get control of a property and make money off of it. And I'm going to share some examples of that here later on this evening. The other one that I really like is probably one of my most fun ones is a co-hosting. So this is usually a situation where you have someone who is maybe a little more open-minded as far as investor point of view, where rather than just saying, just give me my $2,000 a month or my $1,500, I don't want to deal with this, right? I just want rent. Or you get somebody in a co-hosting situation, they're like, you know, I can see the value of this, right? So then you don't have to put as much money into the deal. So you can come in, they'll furnish, they'll supply it, they'll get it all ready. Depending how the contract's written up, either you do it or they do it as far as the actual hands-on part of it to setting it up. And you go in again and you take a portion. So basically it's a management fee. And this can range anywhere from between, I'd say 15 to 25% of the income. So again, if you get a number of these, you know, so many slices of a pie turns out to be a pretty cool dessert, right? So instead of having just one pie, you got a whole bunch of different slices and you're making some really great money. Again, all of these creating win-win scenarios for yourself and the owners. Rental arbitrage, co-hosting, what I've done in the past, it's usually because someone's had a problem and I've come in with the solution to help them to recover money, to recover, you know, time, things like that. I had one lady that I'm rental arbitraging right now, and she bought this condo and she has 4 children. She runs 2 businesses and she decided she was going to do short-term rentals. Excellent. She very quickly decided that this was not for her, because in her mind, when she said she was going to do short-term rentals, she was going to be the one to go do the cleanings and stuff like that. And this is one thing I always say, I don't do beds, I don't do toilets. I pay someone else who's really good at that. The couple times I've had to make beds or done toilets, I've been so bitchy, it hasn't been good for anybody in and around. So I make sure I'm the setup, I'm the management, I have really great staff who does all that. But anyway, this lady had set the property up. It was ready to go. There was dishes, there was plates, there was everything. And I come to her and she had already been holding the property for about 3 months because she didn't want to put in a midterm rental. She didn't want a short-term rental. So here she'd been paying for the mortgage for 3 months of beautifully furnished property. So I came in and within, I believe, 10 days, I had it up on Airbnb and I had it rented out. She was happy. She was getting her monthly amount and she's just happy now. And so now I'm happy because I'm making $500 a month off of that property. I don't own it. So if you do 4 or 5 of these that are $500 a month, see how that's appealing? And I don't do the dishes, I don't do the laundry. So it's all about the systems that I've created to help me be able to do all this stuff. So any questions about this? Again, this is just a quick overview, like dangling the carrot. Oh, Nina, she's going to give us just enough to be dangerous and want us to know more. But you know, Airbnb, short-term rentals, by the time we're done those 2 days, there's still going to be more information you're going to want. But anyway, any questions about this at this time? Everyone's so quiet. Not going to pick.
Do you have any preference between an area that is known for tourism or city or like Toronto or Mississauga? Let me change that. Let me rephrase that. In Ontario, do you have a specific spots that you will invest, you will do short-term rentals?
So it goes back down to where is my money going to come from? And who am I going to attract? So where's the occupancy? So we want to talk about occupancy, nightly rates, and bylaws. So what I like to do, the first off, I take a look at who I want to accommodate. Do I want to accommodate tourists? Do I want to accommodate business people? So if you have, for example, a business-minded structure where you want to attract business people, then you know what, downtown Toronto is going to be more adequate for growing your portfolio. If you want to have the holiday family people, then you know what, out in the lakes areas is going to be more your style. But you just have to take into account, again, there's the due diligence, the bylaws, the occupancy, where are you going to make your money? So I go wherever the money goes. So
Right.
I have no preference, really. It's like, if the dollars and cents make sense, that's where I'll go.
Right.
And yeah, you and I have talked before, so it's really cool. As Paul and I have discussed things before, and Paul knows. So I live in Drumheller, which is 2 hours away from Calgary, and most of my properties are in Calgary. So I have properties in Calgary, Drumheller, and Edmonton. So I can't be there to do all the other stuff. So you don't have to do it in where you live. You can do it anywhere as long as you have the systems in place. But Paul, I think further our discussions, remember we talked about AirDNA and things like that, and these are all the wonderful gems I'm going to give you in class and stuff like that. Find an area and just start exploring it and figure out where you're going to make your money at. Don't you love the wishy-washy answers that I come up with for you guys? Sam's like, oh yeah, Nina's at it again. So I've mentioned before, it's about creating systems, and anything to do with real estate investing is all about systems. We all have our systems in place for, you know what, from this time to this time, I'm going to call leads. From this time to this time, I'm going to set out, you know, whatever strategy you choose to do, you create a system. So for example, when I was concentrating on doing lease options, so I had a part of my day that I talked to homeowners, and I had a part of my day that I, you know, mined for tenant buyers, and I had a part of a day where I qualified. So again, it's the system you have in place that works it. So with short-term rentals, the system is really great because there are some systems that are already in place depending on the platform you're using. So for example, on Airbnb, which I have most of my properties on, I do have some that are direct bookings sometimes. The initial communication with the guests, I do not go in and manually talk to everybody. I did that for a while, and remember the vodka incident I talked about? You know, I could not keep up. I had 3 or 4 properties at the time, and every one time someone made a reservation, I physically went onto my phone and I typed them a message, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So after about 8 months of this misery, I realized, hot damn, I can automate these messages. So I actually go through and show you how to automate these messages. So it's going to help 2 ways. Create that system where you don't have to talk to anybody unless you have to. 2, it also helps you with your superhost status, because on Airbnb, you have up to 24 hours to communicate with the guest. So if you have a guest that reaches out to you, you can automate a message to say within 15 minutes, you'll say, hello, thank you for your inquiry. We'll get back to you shortly. That makes it automated. So now you're automatically keeping that superhost status. The other thing I like to do is I set reminders. I set a reminder about their check-in or their checkout. The house rules, I actually have learned to send the house rules to the guests prior to their check-in. One thing I forgot to ask, who's used Airbnb? Who's had the pleasure of going to use an Airbnb? Hands up, even if it's hands up. Who's used Airbnb? Okay, I got Callum. Bill, you haven't? No? Randy, you haven't? Oh, you guys, once you do Airbnb, you won't go back to hotels. You'll be like, oof, forget it. Anyway, so before a guest can actually be accepted, they have to accept your house rules. Now, it's a little button at the bottom. We've all done those agreement things, right? You don't actually read it, you just click agree. What I actually do is I actually send 9 a.m. the day of check-in, I actually send my house rules to all my tenants, my guests that are coming in. Therefore, if they break the rules, I actually have a trail that shows they've actually had to have acknowledged and read it. See, this isn't because I just happened upon it. This is because I've been burned. So these are the things I want to share with you guys, is these little tricks. So, it's like, oh, look, I sent to you that there's no smoking in the unit and there's a $500 penalty. Guess what? You acknowledged it and it also went in your inbox. You know it. So now I'm going to charge you, right? So these are the things that I've done over the last 3 years. Reminders about late checkout. They're not allowed to have a late checkout. Our turnover staff will be there by 11 a.m. Please remember to take your power cords, your clothing, things like that. Just the gentle reminders. And all the while I'm doing this, I'm always saying, oh, I hope you enjoyed your 5-star stay. I hope you enjoyed your 5-star stay, because what I'm doing is I'm subliminally telling them to give me a 5-star review. See how we work that all in there? It's kind of cool. The other thing too is what I've done. It took me a little while to learn this hard lesson as well, is I got onto a pricing system. So for example, I'm on Price Labs. And what that allows me is I go in and every Monday I have 13 units. And every Monday I go in and it takes me about 10 minutes to do my pricing. 10 minutes a week to figure out my pricing. That's pretty easy to do for that many properties. And all I do is I click in, and by using Price Labs, which actually in the course, I actually show you guys step by step how to set it up and how to do it, is they set a base price. And then what Price Labs does is they're like, okay, Nina has a property and it's right beside the Saddle Dome. Okay, on Friday night, the Calgary Flames are playing. So Price Labs knows the algorithm and they'll actually up the price for that night. I don't have to manually do that. Price Labs does that for me. Easter time's coming, Christmas is coming, here's a long weekend. Price Labs will come in at a marginal fee, and it works out to be anywhere between $12 and $15 per unit that you have listed on them. It's based on the more properties you have, the lower the price is. So what it does is it automatically does that for me. So I don't have to go in and like, oh man, Easter's coming up. I have to go into all my properties calendar and up the prices. Now, at first, I didn't have this system in place. So I would actually manually go in, look on the calendar to see when the Oilers were playing, to see when the Flames were playing, and I would, up the prices. Very tedious, very time consuming, not the way I want to run my business. So when I was doing that, I was also relying on the Airbnb to mark my prices. Now, the problem with that, and this is my opinion, so you can take it with whatever way you want, is you have to watch Airbnb. You have to make sure you set a minimum price, because Airbnb does not care if it's a rock bottomed price out. So say, for example, your property normally goes for like $200 or $250 a night, and they notice that you've got a gap. Well, they will automatically lower the price, and all of a sudden someone's getting that property for $100, which might not necessarily be what you want to do. And or it also might attract the wrong type of guests. So again, when I go on to the Price Labs, I make sure that I set my minimum and things like that. And I actually teach you kind of how to work the numbers backwards. Remember, working numbers backwards? It works at income properties. It also works in short-term rentals. So we work the numbers backwards. What do we need to pay for all our bills? What's the minimum nightly occupancy and things like that, nightly rates that we do. So we do all that with the pricing. And that's also part of our due diligence that we talk about. The other thing I like to highlight too is the staffing. Now, this is, some days I could talk forever about staffing, and that's your turnover staff, that's your maintenance people and stuff like that. The most thing I can talk to you about is having the training down. So you have that system in place that they have training. So I actually have created a check sheet that my turnover staff has to check. They have to send me a picture and they leave it out for the guests. So in this system, I've created it so it's foolproof. So now I don't have a guest calling me up saying, those staff, they didn't send me out enough toilet papers. And I can go, can you please go refer to the yellow sheet in the book? Look, they left out 6 toilet papers. And they're like, oh, because believe it or not, during COVID, I couldn't keep toilet paper in my places. People was stealing it left, right, and center. So once I created this, they're like, I know and you know that I left out 6 rolls of toilet paper. So don't tell me there's no toilet paper, right? So this is the system I've created. There's also the communication tools that we use. So we use a Time Tree app. We also can use Direct, where we actually share the calendar with our staff directly from the Airbnb app. So we share the calendar with our turnover staff. So that's things that I want to share and teach you guys, is how to create these systems so you're not sitting there by your phone, by your laptop, having to work all the time. Now, again, I'm an hour and a half to 3 hours away from my properties. I had a turnover today. It took me about 2 minutes to say, hey, reminder, there's the turnover today. And guess what? Nothing else. Then about 3 hours later, when it was done, she sent me the photos of the property cleaned, and she also sent me that sheet. It was done. Minimal time. Probably about 3 minutes today I spent on Airbnb for that. The rest of the time, my day, I actually spent on mining for properties. So again, the system's in place. Now, one thing I really want to talk about is your listing descriptions. So if you have this in place when you set up your system for listing your property, you want to make sure everything's clear, is concise, the description. So you're not getting these questions like, is there laundry in the unit? You have it listed. You have all that stuff. You highlight it. You have all that communication up there in the listing, in the details, so they know right away. So the more information and the listing descriptions you have, and again, I actually will go through in class and I will actually create a listing. And we'll go line by line and fill it out together. And then you guys will know how to set up a listing. I'll give you those information about the details, the photos, the pricing, how to do all that stuff. So again, it's creating the systems, and having the systems allows you to do, you know, kind of like what Rob Lamontagne is doing. He's in Ecuador. I've been able to do my business from beaches. I've been in Mexico. We've been down in Florida. We've been wherever we need to be. And I don't have to be sitting by my computer. I can do it wherever I wish. So any questions about those?
Nita, have you ever bought a property from the beach? I have.
No, I haven't yet. Ooh, we'll have to talk about that over karaoke. You brought it up, man. You brought it up.
I'll be a cheap drunk by then.
Yeah. So if we sing the tequila song, don't you think we should do the tequila to go with it?
Oh, never again. I will never do tequila again. Oh my God.
Drink, man. Tequila and gin. Got to do them.
Yeah. We'll have to talk about, maybe not this coming round. I might get murdered when I get home.
There you go. So guys, have any questions about this? Again, it's all about placing up your systems, getting it in place. So the more front end work you do, then the less you have to keep doing. So again, it's just that initial. Anyway, I'm just reading because sometimes I can't do 2 things at once. So I'm reading and I'm not talking at the same time. There we go.
I have a question.
You betcha.
For your turnover staff, do you change, like you said, 6 rolls of toilet paper? If you know someone's only staying for like 2 days, would you change something like that and not leave out that much, or is it the same thing over every time?
I try and keep it consistent, and then it's just the consistency for the staff, so they know that, okay, when I do this property, whether it's a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, I leave out 3 rolls of toilet paper in the bathroom, right? One on the roller and 2 in the drawer. Okay. Right. And then it's there. So then it's creating that habit, that consistent habit. Same thing, like, okay, paper towel, there's 1 on the counter, 1 under the sink. We're just creating that habit so it's continuously done all the time. So they don't have to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. And I'm going to say the most time and the most frustration you're going to have, lucky number 3. That is anything to do with a business that's got to do with staffing. That is the one that's going to cause you to have the most frustration. So once you get staff, you get them trained, you get them communication, and the most key thing is communication. You have to keep that open about the expectations and all that stuff. Yes, Bill?
On pricing, how do you price something out to make sure it's going to work as an Airbnb, especially for like an arbitrage situation, you know, where you're renting it out for a certain amount? How do you know that's going to cash flow at the end for you for
You betcha.
looking at stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. So we use a tool, it's called AirDNA. So that is a third party that we usually do a subscription for. It's you can have a free session with them. They don't give you enough information. You have to pay anywhere between $25 and $50 a month for a particular area. And we're actually going to discuss that. And you go in and it gives you all sorts of information about your occupancy, your nightly rates, things like that. There's also another thing in Price Labs, which you can create a dashboard for a particular area. And I really like that one because that one actually a little bit more in depth. It actually tells you the amenities guests are looking at in that area. It tells you what your turnover cost should be, things like that. So that on Price Labs, when you get signed up for that, you can create a dashboard. For example, I have one for Penticton, I have one for Calgary, I have one for Edmonton in certain areas. And what I do is I just extract all that information and I run the numbers backward. So I know, for example, the property is, say, $200 a night. And I like a minimum of say 70%, so 21 nights. And what's that going to look like? Can I pay all my bills and make my designated cash flow that I want? So my designated cash flow that I particularly want every month is say $500. Will that cover it? So again, I run those numbers backwards. What is the minimum? So then I take a look and I'm like, okay, honestly, short-term rentals have some slow months, right? So what is it going to look like in a slow month? Is it 50%? Is it 40%? What do I have to do to run those numbers? So we take a look at, again, break it down that way as well. Did that answer your question, Bill?
Yeah, and you find the AirDNA and the Price Labs are pretty accurate and in the listings that you say you arbitrage or purchase?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
I also go one step further and I'll actually go on to Airbnb. And this takes me a little bit longer and I'll take my little piece of paper and I'll go on to Airbnb and I'll like, okay, I want this area, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath to house 6 people. And I'm like, what's it going to look like? And then I'll actually go into properties that are similar and I'll write out hand, because I'm old school. So I'll also have that as well. So I do 3 things to make sure, because I don't want to get caught into something. So one thing I'm always talking about is due diligence, and I will beat that to hell, but due diligence will save you in the end. So yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, what are the most common issues that you have with staffing?
They don't do a good job. They, my biggest thing, and I also like, when I discuss about staffing, I think I talk about for like 2-3 hours. It's a big, no, because without the proper staff, it will kill your business. So take an example, and these are the hard stops for me. If any of the linens have rips, tears, or stains in them, if there is hair in the tub or in the sink or in the bathrooms, or if there's Creebleys living underneath the bed, that is done, right?
That's going to cause you a bad review.
Exactly. I actually stayed in it, went to Vancouver for Christmas. And I am an Airbnb princess. So we went to this Airbnb, and actually in Vancouver in December, I don't know if you guys knew this, but all hell was breaking loose in Vancouver over Christmas. There was snow, there was rain, there was whatever, it was cold weather. So we go to the house and it's like 40 degrees in the house. We could see our breath. They had forgot to turn the heat on. Okay, no big deal. We go to the bedrooms. I found bodily fluids on the pillows. I found hair in, because the first thing I do, man, is I strip that bed back. I'm stripping her back. A, I'm looking for bed bugs, and B, I'm looking for Creebleys, and I found Creebleys. Then I go to the shower and I find a used bar of soap. Ugh, right? This is just the top tip of the iceberg. I opened the oven and there was dirty dishes in the oven. So we slept in our clothes. We got up the next morning. We were gone by 9 a.m. and we left that Airbnb because that was not the standard that should be Airbnb. And that was the cleaning staff. So yes. Did they get a good review? Absolutely not. I would never recommend them. So cleanliness, and again, I might be a little bit more bit of a princess than other people because I can see things like, oh look, they left smudges on the glass. Or you know what the biggest thing for me is if there's finger or grease prints on the light switches, right? Because that's something common everybody's touching, right? And since we've learned since COVID, you have to put, you know, some sort of disinfectant all over that place. And especially if my staff has this sheet and they've checked off, they've done all this stuff, it had damn well better be done. And I actually have my staff sign a contract that in the event that they don't do a good job, and I have to either A, reimburse the client or the guest, or if I lose them, they have to reimburse me. I've become really hard about this.
Wow.
So they all have to sign this. Yeah.
So even if the night is $400,
Yeah.
you have to reimburse you. Okay.
Yeah. I'm a great boss until you piss me off.
Fair enough.
But it's my livelihood, right? You start getting too many of those, or they don't show up, or they're late, things like that. I had to fire one guy because I found out later he decided to go off his meds, and which is fine. But then he decided to yell at the guest, which did not help because the guest was an elderly couple who had come from out of country. They did not speak English, and their son was not on time to pick them up. But my staff screamed at them to get out of the unit. So the whole 2 weeks they were there, it was wonderful. They loved it. I got great communication. But that last 15 minutes of my staff screaming at the elderly couple killed the review, right? So you just got to watch them.
Right. So in that case, I guess there's a process, but he didn't have the time to read it.
Well, this was before I actually had the contract in place. See, this has been an evolution over the last 3
Gotcha.
years. I didn't know all this. I'm giving you guys all this information so you don't do what I did. So you don't have your gray hairs like I have hairs.
Question, Nina.
You betcha.
Yeah, for the staffing, I'm just curious about their time.
Mhm.
What time do they start working? Are they on call, or are they working full time? How do you manage the staff timing?
So I usually have to make sure, and again, this is more detail I'm going to share on the weekend of the February 25th, but I have to make sure that they're reliable from between 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. because that's our window, because guests check out 11 and the next guests check in at 4. So that is the time. So I usually, as soon as I get a reservation and I know the checkout date, that's when I share it with my staff and they can let me know if they can work it or not. I also have more than one staff. I don't just rely on one company or one crew. I usually have 2 or 3 in the queue because at some time or another, someone's gonna need some time off. So they have to be reliable during those times. And I share that with them as soon as I can. I've only had one that ever just never showed up.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. One more question, if it's
Sure.
possible. Yeah. How do you manage, like, by phone? I'm a newbie about Airbnb. How do they book? Do they book on a certain website? And how do you manage them by phone? And the other thing is, I'm just curious about, are you setting some camera outside, inside?
Well, we talk all about that. But yes, anyway, I do have security cameras on the outside of the properties. That is security for myself as well as for my guests. And there is an Airbnb app. So depending on what platform you go on, there's Airbnb, there's Vrbo, there's Expedia, there's different ways you can put it into it. And we get into more details again with that. But I go to my phone. And if I just go here, I have the Airbnb app right there. I pop it up and then all my communication. So here is my inbox. So it shows everything that's coming up. It also shows my calendar, what units and what properties are booked and when. And then it also shows all my listings. And then I can go in and do any tweaking and any changing around right from my phone. Yeah, simple as that. But how the guest books and stuff like that, that is a quite a bit bigger discussion that we probably don't have time for this evening. But you have to sign up on Airbnb. You have to have a photo ID. You have to have a credit card, driver's license, and email address, and you have to be verified first. So then the guest will go in, they'll put in their criteria, and then they will try and they'll find your property. And what I do is I'm going to show you how they can find you the best. Does that make sense, Winnie?
Yeah, I'm just yes. But I'm just curious. Do you find out are they renting the whole house, or is it by bedroom?
It depends on how you have it situated up. So there's been some cases where you can rent a basement suite from someone else's house. You can rent it by the room, or you can rent the whole property. So it depends on how you structure it. I know pre-COVID, it was very common to have one house and people could rent different rooms, kind of like that rooming house type situation, where they would have different locked rooms and you could be living basically with different strangers for a weekend, and you'd have that shared common space. Or you can have someone, say, for example, renting out your spare bedroom and you have a shared common space. This really has stopped over COVID. It's starting to come back a little bit more, but it is a way, depending on completely how you structure your listing, to whether or not it's whole house, by the room, things like that. Is that good?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So again, we talked about this. If you have the phone, you have the laptop, you can work from anywhere. Yeah, we've been all over the place, and I take my 10, 15 minutes a day, do my management from there, and that's it. Just keep going.
Are there any other places other than Canada that you will set a short-term rental?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Oh, I plan on being globally, so yes. That's the one thing about short-term rentals. The one thing about Airbnb is it is global. It is everywhere. And it has the same standard, which is really great as far as, super host status and how the rankings are. It's ranked out of 5. So 5 stars means you top notch. And so it's very consistent throughout the globe. So you know what? One day I'm just going to pick a dart and I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to set up a short-term rental.
And
somewhere
can I chime in
warm
for a
like
second?
Ecuador.
One of the things to think about, and I think I'm, if not the oldest person on the call, right up there. Part of my strategy for retirement is putting together Airbnbs or VRBOs, short-term rentals, in countries, in climates that work for the lifestyle that I want, right? So I want a place to go to in the winter or throughout the year, and go there for a week, go there for 2 weeks, go there for 3 weeks. But they're not just not costing me money, they're paying me. That's part of my long-term strategy for my retirement phase. So put some thought into how you want to build your business. And again, when I've had talks with some of you, you'll have a short-term plan, a mid-term plan, a long-term plan. And that's going to evolve. I'm sure, Nina, 10 years ago, you weren't thinking short-term rental, right? But as your business evolves and grows, you modify your business. It grows as you grow. It evolves and builds as you do. So keep in mind what your goals are.
Yeah. So what I've been looking at lately is, every year they come up with the top 10 or 15 countries to retire to as Canadians. Those are the places I'm going to buy, or I'm going to have STR properties at, right? So it's countries you wouldn't like. So it's like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Because their cost of living is fairly low there, right? Just once you get there, you're fine. But it's also places, there's been some, where was it? Some places by the Baltic Sea They would have really great healthcare and benefits for Canadians over there, and the cost of living was lower. And you could rent a place there for like, what was it, $1,200 a month? Heck yeah,
Wow.
right? Yeah. So it's like, change this globally. So yeah, I'm always looking, I'm like, oh, I'd go there. Oh, I'd go there. Because one of my, so like Rob just said, you know, we pivot, we change, we grow. So one of my goals is to be able to leave this wonderful Canadian weather and no power for like how many hours and go live somewhere globally. So that would mean 8 weeks here or 3 months here or back and forth all over the place. Or I'm going to go come haunt my children for a while, wherever they end up in the world. And I'm going to go live in the city that they're at and harass them for a few months, right? So things like that.
I guess
By the way, none of you get to complain about weather. I live in the crappiest weather here.
what are you talking about? So here in Muskoka on what was it? The weekend, Christmas, that weekend where the storm was. Yeah, do you remember the storm? Yeah, that was crazy. I had probably 4 to 5 feet of snow.
Yeah, it's insane. Even with us going to Vancouver at Christmas, and there was like 2 feet of snow and then this torrential downpour of rain. And I'm like, what the hell? If I want a torrential downpour of rain, I want it to be like plus 20, right? Not like 5 above. So anyway, yeah, it's fun. So this is a really cool something I wanted to share with you guys. So this is a rental arbitrage that we've done, and we've had this one for since 2020. So this one came around to us, and what this one is we found a owner who was tired of tenants and toilets. And so they's like, you know what? It appeals to us to have a company like you come in, have someone staying for a little while, know it's being cleaned very well, looked after. So he's like, I'll rent it to you guys. So this was another one of our first rental arbitrages. So it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. For our initial investment was $10,000. So that included the deposit of the $2,000 as well as furnishings. So we did, you know, the queen size beds and the leather sofa and things like that. So the average expenses, so here you guys can see the numbers here on the side here. So for the 4 months, there was $15,000 made. Expenses were $8,862, and average cash flow was $6,000. So 2021, here we go. We did, so yeah, I'll talk about something about COVID after here. So 38,000 expenses, made 11,000, 2020, 38, 37, 26, so 10,000. So over the 28 months since owning this property, we've made 28,000 over. So that makes the average monthly cash flow of $1,000. How's that?
No bad at all.
OPP, baby, OPP, other people's property. This guy is so happy. He's so happy we're doing this.
You said this is in Calgary, I guess. This
is Calgary. This one is right across from the University of Calgary. So again, this is the location. So Bill, yes, I took a look at the location. I took a look. So it was by the University of Calgary. It's by McMahon Stadium. It's by the Children's Hospital. It's close to shopping, and it's very close route on way to Banff and Canmore. So really great location.
Just a quick question. Are you negotiating 1-year leases, 2, 3? Because, you know, say you do a 1-year lease and they want it back, you basically broke even for the year after your initial investment, furnishings and stuff like that. So are you negotiating longer leases in or trying to, or?
Initially, I like to do at least 1 year. 9 times out of 10, they want you to stay on, because what is the most biggest pain in the ass is finding new tenants. If you're already in there and they're making a cash flow and they're happy, they're lazy. They're going to keep you in there. They're not going to get rid of you. The only reason why you would leave is if they're going to ask for an extra amount of money per month that's going to throw your numbers out of whack or something like that, or they get you shut down. But we're working on our 3rd year.
So
I've got
the first year, make them happy, make sure everything's good, and they'll keep you on, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like I say, I've actually let more go than I've had the owner say, go away. I've let properties go back because I didn't like the margins, or maybe the property building wasn't being managed to my standards anymore. So I've let more properties go than I have had owners say, go away, Nina, we don't like you. They love me. I usually go in, I usually paint the units, I look after them, I do maintenance and repairs. I send them pictures, I send them updates. They usually really like it. They like me. And plus I'm an investor. So I'm like the best tenant ever. Yeah. And the other thing too about getting caught in a 2-year lease, what happens if the market does die down? Now all of a sudden you're looking at breaking a lease. So, I usually say to them, the minimum I want to sign is a year, because I've taken all this time, this effort, and this money for me to get your property up to my 5-star standard. I want to do it for at least 1 year.
Will you consider 6 months too short?
The only
Yeah.
way I would do that is it was already furnished, or it was a co-host, but I would not go out and buy $10,000 or $8,000 worth of furniture for 6 months. Especially if it's a 6 months that happens to be in the slow season or something like that, then it just doesn't make sense. Yeah. As much as I want to create win-wins, this lady's got to win first. It's all about the dollars and cents, right? So yeah, so this is a great rental arbitrage scenario, right? Now, I'm not going to, blow sunshine up your butt and tell you every month looks like this, because there's some months that you're like, holy crap, I barely made the bills, or I got to contribute a little bit. But if you take a look at the whole year average, it's okay. But you got to make sure you tuck away for the rainy days, right? Now, here's
Nina,
another.
have you ever paid more than market rent to make it more appealing to them? No.
Because they're already getting an amazing tenant. Why would I pay them more?
No, I'm trying to wrap my head around like the extra volume in the building, right?
Yeah. The only way I would do that is if, for example, if the numbers still worked all right, but I usually pay fair market rent, if not a little bit less, because it's being looked after better. Because I will do odd maintenance, like I will have things fixed that I'll fix the toilet. I'll fix. Here the other day, I had to have a window fixed in one of the units because the crank fell off, and it was one of the high rises. So I called in the maintenance person. I had it fixed. I flipped the bill for $300. I didn't make them do it, right? So I just highlight how good it is. I painted their unit for them,
There's the trade-off. You're taking the need for support off the table from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fewer headaches.
Exactly, for sure. Yeah. I don't like to pay full price for anything. Now this one is really cool. So this one is a co-host. So this one is in Drumheller, so it's about 20 minutes away. Dinosaur capital of the world. Yay, come see us to see dinosaurs. So my total investment was $500. So this one was something that I insisted I wanted to do. This was a gentleman who had a property, a nice 4-bedroom bungalow house in Drumheller. Him and his significant other, they just split up, and he's a farmer. So he has a house on the farm, and then he had this house in town, and she's no longer in the picture. So he has this property that's just sitting there vacant. Now, he doesn't know anything about short-term rentals. He doesn't have time. He also doesn't want to deal with tenants and toilets because he's a very particular person. Like, he likes his house to be meticulous. Single guy living alone. He had his housekeeper come in 3 times a week, like 3 times a month. So he was very meticulous. So having a longer term tenant, and whoever's had tenants, you know how they live. You don't know people until you've seen how they've lived. Anyway, he didn't want that. So, but there was something I wanted to be there. So it was actually, there was a little table I wanted to put in with chalk paint and chalk in the kids' room that I insisted on doing, that I paid for myself. And I insist on Keurig machines. I absolutely insist on Keurig machines in all mine. So that was something I flipped the bill for. So in 4 months, he grossed $22,000. Now, if he had actually had that property as a long-term rental, so I just put a tenant in there for 4 months, he only would have made $2,500 a month or $10,000 over the 4 months. So he actually created over doubled as running it as a short-term rental. So again, we created a win-win situation for him. And as a co-host, because I'm charging a percentage to manage the property, to use my systems and use my people, I was making on average just under $700 a month for my $500 investment. OPP, baby, that's where it's at.
What was the investment? What did you pay him $500 for?
So this property is like in Drumheller, and there's a definite themed kids room. And so what I want to do is I bought one of those plastic tables that you get at Canadian Tire, and I put chalk paint on it. And I got some really cool dinosaur chalk so little kids can go in and write. And I wanted some dinosaur plushies. And I also wanted a Keurig machine in there. So I paid for that out of my own pocket just to make it my 5-star quality. And people love it. I think that table cost me $50, and the chalk paint, I made my kids paint it. So it didn't cost me anything. So $20 in chalk paint. And every kid that goes into that place loves it because they have a chalk table to write on. It's just little things like that that make you a super host and brings it all in. And there's dinosaurs on the walls and dinosaur chalk. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
Do you just admit on a recording on the internet that you used a sweatshop, child labor?
I do, but you know what? One's 18 now, so it's not really child labor anymore. So my kids are homeschooled, so I can, you know what? I've created a class called IKEA, and they put together all sorts of IKEA furniture. I also had them come to Penticton with me, and we set up furniture. We called that life skills. Yeah, my kids have been part of real estate investing since they were like toddlers. So this is their lifestyle. But yes, I use my children as a sweatshop. Yeah. But I pay for their gas in their car. I pay for their insurance. It's a fair trade. It's a whole family business, right? So
Gotta love it.
I know. Hey,
Sorry, Nina, I stepped away for a bit. Co-hosting, right? So basically, it's someone else's house is furnished, and then what you are doing is putting the place into platform Airbnb or Vrbo, and bringing the people in, and everything else is set up, right?
you betcha. So usually the furniture's there. So then what I do is I come in with linens. I come in with those added touches that makes it my 5-star. I arrange for the turnover staff to be hired and trained. I set up the listing. I make all those arrangements and stuff like that. So I keep that. So that's what I make. And I think Elise asked in the chat, I haven't forgot about you. So what it is how I calculate is, let's go up. So it depends on, so how I set up my rental arbitrage is just flat up rent. And that's what I pay them. As a co-host, what I end up doing is I will say, okay, here's your gross revenue, and I'm going to take a percentage, but I don't take a percentage. So this is how I run it a little bit differently than some people. The first person I pay is my turnover staff, because to me, they are vital. So say, for example, we made $5,000 in a month, and the turnover cost was $1,000. So that comes off the bat. So then I'm left with $4,000. That's where I take my percentage. Now that percentage can vary depending on the deal, the property, things like that, how much work you have to do. The minimum I'll do it for is 15%, and I'll go up to about 25% depending on how the numbers work. Because you don't want to have such a high percentage that the owner is going to be like, tap out, that doesn't work. So you have to, again, that negotiation, what it comes up with. So sometimes I'll say to the owner, I'm like, you know what, this is a great deal, 20%. So I'll initially do the numbers for say 25% of my cut. And then I kind of get a feel of how they're doing. And if they're hedging, I'm like, you know what, for you, I can do it for 20. I just look like a hero. And all along I wanted 20%. So Elise, did that answer your question a little bit? She's so quiet tonight. Okay, excellent. So yeah, this is the co-hosting. So I have 3 co-hosting deals that I do. And yeah, this is pretty much what I make every month just off of co-hosting. Because I have my systems in place. It makes it so much easier. That gives me time to chat with you guys. So I have 13 properties and they're all OPP. I do not own one of them. So I'm running a very viable business without owning a property. I create cash flow and I create win-win scenarios for owners, guests, and myself. My son just turned 18 and he wants to do this as soon as he can. He wants to lease a property and do rental arbitrage himself because he sees the benefit of, hey mom, I can rent it. I can put it on a platform and I can make $500 while I go to school. Why not? Again, we're going to really talk in depth with this at the end of the month. But again, we're going to talk about due diligence. We're going to talk about how we set these systems in place and how to set up your listing to get noticed and stuff like that. So today was just to kind of give you guys a bit of a, what's going to be coming down the pipe a little bit. So I can't tell it all in an hour. I took courses and it probably took me, so I decided to take courses in about late summer of 2019. I took some online courses, took me 6 weeks to do some online courses. And then I got my first rental arbitrage in November of 2019. And then we had COVID hit March of 2020. So the good thing about it is because I really paid attention to my classes and what we go through, how you pick your properties and how you pick your guests, is I had enough of the check boxes checked off of who I could qualify to come stay at my property that I was actually able to maintain and keep things going during COVID. I'm not saying I made a ton of cash, but I didn't lose money. I think there was 1 month where I actually lost quite a bit. Not gonna lie, I had to put about $3,000 into my short-term rental business. That was March of 2021. So I think I did pretty good, all that over COVID, and there was only 1 month where it really hurt. But the rest of that, I was able to mitigate losses and maintain stuff. So I took that as a win, for sure. And then we also
You had a
talk
better
about,
March than I did.
and then we talk about too, about, what happens when it's slow? What do you do? How do you increase your listings? What happens? What happens if you turn it to a midterm rental? So we're going to talk about that as well, because that's actually part of what I'm doing right now with my strategy, because the market is really crazy slow right now in Calgary. So I'm actually doing some midterm rentals, and I'm going to talk that process with you guys as well. Yeah, so hopefully I can see you guys in Rental Revolution in February. If not in person, I do believe that this is also can be streamed live. I think Rob and Kurt told me.
Yeah.
So if you can't be in Toronto, it can be like you're in Toronto.